Richard Nixon was forced to resign, two things shoved him out the door. The first was that his approval rating had finally fallen into the 20s, where even his political allies could no longer afford to stand with him, for fear of going down with him. The second was that he was about to face obstruction of justice charges head-on. Donald Trump is about to face similar charges, and he is nearly into the 20s. So now what? That's the tricky part. Once Nixon did resign, that was the end of the roadmap for what happens when a criminal president is being ousted. We don't know precisely what that would have happened if he'd tried to hang on longer. When Gerald Ford promptly pardoned him, that was the end of the roadmap for how a criminal president is prosecuted after he's ousted. We don't know what would have looked like, either. So do we know anything? As it turns out, yes. The crystal ball does get a bit hazy here. Up to now, we've been using Nixon's downfall as the singular example for how Trump's demise might play out. Now we're not even going to have that example to work with anymore. But we can always fall back on the first law of politics. When it comes down to it, everyone in office ultimately cares more about getting re-elected than anything else. That applies to Trump's current Republican allies in Congress. The GOP is still trying to prop up Donald Trump in the hope that it can keep his approval rating out of the politically fatal 20s before the midterm elections in November. Once he takes a few more serious blows, whether it be criminal findings by Robert Mueller, or more bombshells from the media, he may well drop into the 20s. At that point, the GOP would have to reevaluate its strategy. Aside from individual buffoons like Devin Nunes, there's little loyalty here. It's just a cold mathematical calculation by each Republican in office about whether the odds of getting re-elected are better or worse with Trump still in office. If they ultimately feel they need to jettison him for their own selfish interests, they will. If they don't, they won't. The big question is what happens if the GOP does decide to stand by Donald Trump through the midterms, even as his presidency becomes more untenable. Because there's so little legal precedent here, Robert Mueller can try to bypass impeachment and prosecute Trump directly in a court of law while he's still in office. The courts would have to decide how far to allow him to go with it. The point of it, of course, would be to expose Trump's crimes and continue to drive his approval rating down to the point that the GOP has no choice but to dump him before the midterms. Keep in mind that when Trump first took office, his approval rating was in the low to mid-40s. Now it's in the low to mid-30s. Despite all the rhetoric about Trump's base never abandoning him, he very clearly can lose supporters. He's already lost tens of millions of them. Trump's non-base supporters, the tepid ones who are only still saying yes to approval rating pollsters out of party loyalty or habit, are the ones who would likely abandon him as his prospects get uglier and his guilt becomes more painfully clear. The average American still has no idea who Robert Mueller is. Ask around among your non-political friends. You'll be shocked, and has no idea whether to believe those claiming that the Russia scandal is real, or those claiming that it's a hoax. This will rapidly change as Mueller reaches his endgame. Some minds will change, though not those of his base or the resistance. With just 9 months left until the 2018 elections, at this late date it's more likely the GOP would privately force Trump to resign, rather than trying to hurry up and impeach him before the midterms. Or they can leave him in place and wait for the upcoming Democratic majority to take out the trash. Keep up to date with the latest Palmer Report articles via email. Get the latest content first. Email address update preference as new articles are added daily. Subscribe now. We respect your privacy.